Welcome back, sixth graders. This is Ms. Hall here, your ARC ELA teacher for today. I'm excited to share a new lesson with you. Today, we're going to focus our attention on argument, but more specifically, understanding argument. Now, you know that we all have opinions, which are great, but when we're talking about opinions, we need to understand that sometimes our opinions need to be moved to the side and focus on understanding what is facts versus opinion. So our objective for today is I can locate and identify position, claims, and verifiable reasons or evidence that can be used to support the claims made. Again, as sixth graders, we're going deeper instead of just stating our own personal opinions. Are you ready to get started? I am. Let's go. So for today's lesson, you'll need a few things: your ELA notebook, pen and pencil, and as always, that trusty highlighter, because we're all fancy now at this point. You may notice that I don't have a text actually listed as our materials for today. That's because we're going to work with this together as we're going along. So you ready to get started? Let's begin. So first things first, let's talk about the difference between fact and opinion. This should be a review, but I just want to make sure that we're covering our bases to make sure we understand the difference between the two. Now, when we're talking about facts, that is something that can be proven to be true. Keyword there is proven. When we're talking about opinions, oftentimes we rely on personal experience or beliefs. Can't always be proven. So here with our Venn diagram, I want us to really dig in and talk a little bit about the difference between an argument versus opinion. Our first circle is going to represent argument. Our second circle is going to represent opinions. So at this time, take a moment, pause the video, and see if you can fill in some items that you will select for just opinions or some just for argument, and we'll come back together and tally our thoughts. So one strategy that you may use as you're completing Venn diagrams is you may try to find any similarities that both sides may have. I tend to focus on the similarities first and then find the differences. Others like to focus on something that's strictly for that one column and move inward, whichever works for you. For this one, I'm gonna start with the outside and then work my way inside. So we're gonna start with the differences and then end with our similarities. Let's start with argument. So again, when we're thinking about argument, we're looking for verifiable evidence. Now, the key word here is verifiable. Verifiable is another word for proven. It can be proven by research, statistics, data, anything like that to make your case stronger. How do we feel about the word verifiable? If you haven't heard that word before or a little iffy about it, don't worry, add that to your ELA notebook as well. Because again, by the time we graduate high school, how many words we need to have in our bank? That's right, 40,000. Let's keep moving. Next, we're going to talk about opinion. Opinions can not always be proven. For example, oftentimes when we're referring to opinions, we may rely on personal experiences. My personal experience may vary from yours, so therefore it can't really prove if indeed it is factual information. Now, what do we have left? Exactly, we're going to focus now on how do these two terms relate to each other. How are they similar? Both sides, whether you're dealing with an argument or opinion, they take a stance. And I'm going to add an asterisk beside this word as well, because that may be a word that you want to add to your vocabulary list as well. Now, a stance basically means we know this is our belief, this is what we feel is right. And both in an argument and stating an opinion, everybody has a strong stance or belief. Can you think of any other similarities between the two? Another one I want to add is the fact that they both rely on personal experiences as well. The only difference between opinion here and argument, when we're talking about personal experience, keep in mind, opinions can't always prove it. Again, our experiences are different, but with the argument, when we're talking about personal experiences, it can be proven at some rate. How do we feel so far about using our Venn diagram? Great. Now we're going to go into our technical definitions of both terms. I'm going to ask you to pause the video one more time just so you can jot down these terms. So the first term we have here is argument. The main component here is just understand that arguments must be supported by only verifiable or provable evidence and reasons. Opinions, however, can be based on personal experience as well as facts and data. Again, they're very similar, but they have some distinctive differences between the two. Me saying that I do not like Takis is my own personal experience, so it may not be the same for you. However, if I decided to take a poll of my class to determine how many actually enjoy eating Takis versus who do not, that is how we go from opinion to argument, because we're able to prove it as well. Another thing is I could say, I love reality TV. Personal opinion, personal experience. However, if I did something very similar for my students, hey, how many of you enjoy watching reality TV? Now we have some more data that we can use to make our argument stronger. How do we feel about argument versus opinion? Great, let's jump into some examples together. Now for this exercise, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to read the selection together, and then first we're going to underline the writer's position. Now when we're talking about position, we want to know what is their thoughts. What is their main thought as we read this text? There's one sentence that stands in mind. So let's take a look. Labradoodles make the best pets. First of all, they're the perfect size, not too big, but not some little poofy dog either. They are also always very loving. My Labradoodle sleeps with me every night, and I just love cuddling up with him. President and Mrs. Obama were going to get a Labradoodle, but they got a Portuguese water dog instead. Still, if it was good enough for the president to consider, it's good enough for me. In fact, I named my Labradoodle Bo after the president's dog. Now take a moment, find the sentence that states the author's position. For me, it's clear that the very first sentence states the author's position. Labradoodles make the best pets. Now, this slide is titled Position, Claims, and Evidence and Reasons. So now we need to figure out what are some claims that the writer makes to support the statement that Labradoodles make the best pets. Take a moment, highlight a sentence that stands out for you. Now we can all agree that this very first sentence, Labradoodles make the best pets, sounds like a personal opinion. Wouldn't you agree? Exactly, because my personal favorite are boxers. Do you have a favorite pet? I know, that was my random moment for today. We're going to keep it moving. Now let's find a claim that our author used to support that Labradoodles make the best pets. They are the perfect size, not too big, but not some little poofy dog either. Do you see anything else? I noticed that they mentioned the president and Mrs. Obama were actually considering this dog, but they got a different dog instead. Do you see any information that can be proven or verifiable? Exactly. We can figure out and find out if indeed President Obama and First Lady Mrs. Obama actually did consider the dog, which they did. What about the first one? They are the perfect size, not too big, but not some little poofy dog either. Can that be verified? It could potentially be verified, but again, the part of the sentence that stands out the most is the fact that they are the perfect size. Depending on the person, they may like a larger dog or even a small dog like a teacup dog. How do we feel so far? Let's do another example together. I'm going to read this for you. If you want to take a moment to pause the video to read it for yourself, more than welcome to do so as well. Labradoodles do not make good pets. First of all, you can never be sure of a Labradoodle's temperament. This is because anytime you cross two breeds, such as a poodle and a Labrador, you cannot be 100% sure about the genetic mix. So although most Labradors tend to be gentle, many poodles are high-strung, and the SPCA does not recommend them to families with young children. Furthermore, Labradoodles can develop lots of health problems. In fact, veterinarians and breeders note that both poodles and Labrador retrievers have a tendency to develop hip and eye problems. With today's troubled economy, no one wants to spend all their money to treat a pet's medical conditions, which can cost thousands of dollars. What is our writer's position here? Take a moment, find it for yourself. Which sentence states the author's position? You got it, the very first sentence. Labradoodles do not make good pets. First, I want you to find some verifiable evidence that supports our author's claim that Labradoodles do not make good pets. Take a moment if you need to pause the video to find your evidence. Now I'm going to use the green highlighter to highlight the verifiable evidence in this selection. Did you find it? Here's what I suggested. In fact, veterinarians and breeders note that both poodles and Labrador retrievers have a tendency to develop hip and eye problems. How can this be proven? There may be some articles out there, or even speaking to veterinarians and breeders in your area can prove this statement to be either true or false. Now I'm going to highlight the non-verifiable information in yellow. Did anything stick out to you? I selected this sentence. This is because anytime you cross two breeds, such as a poodle and a Labrador, you cannot be 100% sure of the genetic mix. Yes, we could do some research and figure this out, but who's going to research all poodles and all Labradors in the country or in the world? So this is another one that can be 100% proven, but we provided enough evidence in this text to kind of support what their statement was here. Did anything else stick out for you? I just made a special notation here where it talks about Labradoodles temperament, because we do see additional evidence that supports the temperament of poodles as well as Labrador retrievers. How do we feel so far? Great, let's do another example together. Labradoodles make the best pets. A Labradoodle is a cross between a Labrador retriever and a poodle. That is why they are called a hybrid. They are good family dogs because they have the peaceful disposition of a Labrador. In fact, the SPCA recommends them for families with young children. They are also good for people who have allergies to dog hair because, like a poodle, they don't shed much. That means there are fewer allergens to bother people who have allergic reactions to pet hair dander. No wonder they have become one of the most popular dogs over the past 10 years. Did you notice any differences from this selection and the previous one? You will notice that they both quoted or mentioned the SPCA in this text, but we had different opinions or different evidence to support their claim. Now let's underline the author's position here. Perfect. Labradoodles make the best pets. Now I want you to find some evidence to support the author's position. Now, if you're like me, sometimes it's easier to find the verifiable evidence first versus the non-verifiable. Whichever works for you, make it work. I'm going to look for some verifiable evidence first, and I'm going to use the color green. I chose this sentence. In fact, the SPCA recommends them for families with young children because it quotes the SPCA, which is an organization that knows a lot about dogs. Now let's find a sentence that best supports the author's position that Labradoodles make the best pets, but would be a little challenging to prove it otherwise. They are also good for people who have allergies to dog hair because, like a poodle, they don't shed much. I have a question for you. What makes these two pieces of evidence so different? Why did I choose the first sentence as verifiable evidence and not the second sentence? So our first sentence in green, in fact, the SPCA recommends them for families with young children, is because, as I mentioned before, we're talking about SPCA experts on pets, particularly dogs. However, look at our next sentence. It's a generic sentence. Yes, it could to some extent be proven, but it'd be very challenging to do so. Both are great examples of evidence that supports our author's position that Labradoodles make the best pets. Let's try another example together. Labradoodles do not make good pets. First of all, they are big dogs, so they eat a lot and need a lot of room to run. That can spell trouble for pet owners. For example, my neighbor had a Labradoodle and he was always running away. Finally, one day he escaped and did not return home. What is our author's position here? Great. Labradoodles do not make good pets. Have a question for you. Do you see any evidence or claims or reasons that can be proven? In this case, I really don't see anything that could be proven with research or data. So we're going off of personal experiences. So what are some personal experiences that the author mentions in this selection? For example, my neighbor had a Labradoodle and he was always running away. That sounds like a personal connection that they use to make their evidence or their claim even stronger. Can this be proven with research or data? No, not necessarily. But is this a fact? Absolutely, because he's using personal experience from their neighbor. And yes, we can use this as a claim or evidence that supports our writer's position that Labradoodles do not make good pets. Now, I hope you're able to see how, yes, it's important to understand the difference between an opinion versus an argument, but also understand that we use both of it to make our positions stronger. And that's what sixth graders do. Now, before we go, I do want to remind you that we want you to keep reading for at least 30 minutes. My challenge for you today is to find a book of a different genre that you haven't read before. For example, I love historical fiction and science fiction. So my challenge is to try to read something that doesn't fall into those categories. For example, some drama or even something that is like adventure, which will be in our upcoming unit. Try something different and see how you like it. You never know, you might enjoy it yourself. If you're not sure it will be a great book to read, please touch base with your teacher or your media specialist. They will enjoy sharing some great titles with you. As always, I look forward to seeing you all again. Thank you for hanging out with Ms. Hall. See you later.